Firstly, can you introduce yourself, tell the listeners a bit about your background, and why that makes you to be a good candidate to represent them in Westminster?
Hello. So my name's Bridget Smith. I've been the leader of South Cambridgeshire District Council for the last 6 years, and I've been a district councillor for 16 years. Before that, I worked in education. I've worked in the health service. I've worked in the voluntary sector. I started a local charity. I have been and I'm still a carer. I was a carer for one of my children for a lot of years, and more recently for my elderly parents. And I've been self-employed. So I think I'm probably quite representative of lots of the people who will be listening to this podcast.
What's your personal motivation for standing in this year's election?
So I think it's really important that people have a choice when it comes to going to the polling station. Um, and I think it's vital that that choice includes a Liberal Democrat candidate. You know, this, even though we have quite binary politics in this country, people do want choice. And I think as the other two parties kind of go to the extremes, I think the middle ground is looking much more comfortable for a lot of people. They don't want extremism, either right or left. So I'm standing because I want to give people the choice of a Lib Dem candidate, and hopefully they'll vote for me.
Now, Peterborough City Council's funding from central government has been cut by over 37% in real terms since 2016 and 70% since 2013. The results of this have been cuts in services and a rising council tax of over 40%. What will you and your party do to ensure the city gains the financial support it requires to continue to provide the services that its citizens want and need?
So local government has been absolutely destroyed over the last 15 years. They've just chipped away at local government funding. And, you know, it's local government who provide the services that really matter to people. So I'm leader of a district council, and district council touches everyone's lives. We empty everyone's bins. We mow the grass in your parks and so much more. County councils are much more, they touch fewer people's lives because they're dealing with education, with social care, and so on. And so it's disgraceful that funding's being cut, and consequently services that people really value are being cut. It's bad enough when we see things like swimming pools going, but it's even worse when we see bin collections being reduced. So, you know, I also work for the Local Government Association, and I represent the Lib Dems there, and we're campaigning for fairer funding for local authorities. You have to fund local authorities properly so that we can do all the stuff that keeps people well and happy and healthy, well housed, able to travel on their roads without bursting their tyres and potholes, and, you know, educate their children and so much more. So we have to have fair funding from central government, but also freedom for local government to raise its own funds as well.
It's been said that Peterborough is an NHS dental desert, with people having to travel 50 miles to find one. There are also constant complaints about the difficulties of getting an appointment at the city's GPs, with appointments for the day gone by 1 minute past 8. What will you do to see a rapid improvement to that situation?
So this is another problem that we're seeing nationally, not just in Peterborough. I gather though that 41% of people in Cambridgeshire are struggling to get dental appointments, and we've recently done a survey of GPs, and 60% of people think they're going to have difficulty getting a GP's appointment, even though once they get them, they're very happy with the service they're getting. So the government have absolutely failed to invest in either GPs or in dental practices. The Liberal Democrats would bring dental services back into the NHS. At the moment, we have a really unfair two-tier system, where, you know, you either pay in order to guarantee you see a dentist, or if you can't pay, the odds are you won't be able to see a dentist. We're also committed to creating 8,000 new GP roles, and, you know, working with GPs so they stay in this country. We train lots of terrific GPs who go off to places like Australia, where they treat their GPs better. So there has to be significant investment, and I think bringing dental services back into the NHS, out of the private sector, is a really good start. And hopefully, you know, we'll stop seeing, you know, scandalous things such as The most common reason for a young child going to hospital if they come from a poor background is for dental problems because they've got raging toothache, and that's just so wrong.
Peterborough's population grew by 17% between 2011 and 2021, the third fastest growth in the country. What's your plan or policy on where housing should be built in and around the city over the next 10 years?
So there's a crying need for decent housing. So as Liberal Democrats, we are very committed to housing that's affordable, making sure that we're building houses that suit everybody, council houses, shared equity houses where you buy a bit and you rent a bit, and so on and so forth. So in South Cambridgeshire, we're committed to 40% of all new homes being affordable homes, and I think that's perfectly achievable in Peterborough as well. But what we can't be doing is just creating massive housing estates where people have no choice but own a car. And particularly with this ongoing cost of living crisis, we've got to give people choice. So housing has to be built well connected by sustainable public transport, electric buses. You must be able to cycle, use a scooter, walk if we're able to walk. And new communities have to have all the services. So they have to have a dentist, they have to have a health service for GPs. People have to be able to get to their work, to get to their school, to get to their leisure and their entertainment, their sport, without using their car, ideally. So we've got to build communities, not housing estates. And when I visit Peterborough, which I do very often these days, actually, I see plenty of places where there is potential to create the sort of places where my benchmark is, would I let my 94-year-old mum live there? Sort of places where I'd be happy for my mum to live. And if places aren't good enough for my mum, then they're not good enough for your listeners either.
A report produced last year stated that for the city to reach net zero, it would cost in the region of £8.8 billion. What action will you take to promote environmental sustainability and address climate change locally without bankrupting the council?
So the key thing here is that it's not councils' sole responsibility to address climate change. Councils can influence about 30% of carbon emissions. But there are other people in the game, and the main one is the government. So what we have to do is get people out of their cars, and get them onto those electric buses, get them onto the electric scooters, get them onto their bikes, get them onto their feet, or get them into car share. So we've got to take cars off the road. So in South Cambridgeshire, where I'm responsible for, our carbon emissions are 25% higher than the national average, and that's purely down to transport. We've got to get the lorries off the road. We've got to invest in rail so that we get all that freight onto the railways, which is far more environmentally sustainable. We also have to do a massive programme of retrofitting our existing housing stock. I live in a house which has oil and it has gas, and it is freezing cold and very leaky, and I think it has a terrible carbon footprint. I live in a conservation area, so I'm very limited in what I can do about it. So we've got to start addressing that. So we've got to make sure that we make all of our existing houses, as well as the new ones, as environmentally sustainable as possible, because that's good for the environment. But actually, having a really well insulated house that runs off renewable energy is good for your pocket as well. So these houses are cheaper to run, as well as better for the environment. So transport and housing, the main boxes we have to tick. Government have to step in. They have to invest in renewable energy generation. They have to invest in the railways. They have to give us money to move all our buses to electric buses, and they have to start subsidising those of us who own our homes or who rent out homes in order to make those homes energy efficient.
This year sees the first time in over 50 years that Speedway hasn't been taking place in the city after the Panthers were told they could no longer use the track at the showground. Would you support the Panthers to get back racing, and if so, how?
So isn't that a shame? And I think this was something that was really really special to Peterborough and matters to a lot of Peterborough people. So sport and leisure are really important to the local economy, And Peterborough's really lucky. It's got it's got ice hockey, which is really exciting. It's got fantastic football teams, but it needs to have breadth as well. Something for everybody. Um, and if we invest in sport and leisure, we get all the benefits to the economy, the people providing the food and the drink and the transport and the accommodation and so on benefit out of it. But the health and well-being benefits of investing in sport and leisure are absolutely enormous. And we know from the pandemic that the people who did least well were the people who were not fit, the people who were isolated. And we can do something through providing lovely exciting things like speedway or sports facilities that allow people to play football or walk or do ice hockey. So it's vital for the good of the community.
There's a feeling among some Peterborough residents that the city is treated like the poor cousin of Cambridge. How will you ensure the city gets its fair share and becomes an equal county partner?
So I don't think I know that's some people's perception. I think the thing is Peterborough is very different from Cambridge. Cambridge is a very small, heritage-rich, university-focused city, albeit with lots of high-tech stuff and biomed stuff going on. Peterborough's really special, actually. So it has an economy that has been bucking trends, an economy that is growing. It has a brand new university, which I was involved in with my role on the board of the combined authority. So I was there last week, and I'm going to be there again next week. And that's it's a great building, and you're very lucky to have that, but you deserve it. But you have capacity for manufacturing industry, which is dying out elsewhere. The strength of Peterborough is its connections to London. It's really well placed. So I think Peterborough needs to shout louder about what makes it special, not compare itself to Cambridge because it is different. Doesn't mean that it's a second-class citizen. It's just different, and it's special in its own way, and has massive potential to be a real leader in very many areas within the UK as a whole, and a net contributor to the public purse as well. Which is something that we are building on in the east of England, which other parts of the country really struggle with.
What's the biggest challenge facing Peterborough over the next 5 years?
So, I mean, we've already talked about housing, and we've already talked about climate change. So that's two big issues for Peterborough. I think there's a regrettable amount of inequality within Peterborough as well, and I think we need to make sure that life is fair for everybody. Again, hopefully the university, which I just mentioned, hopefully that gives a lot of young people access to a university who might not have had it before. I know the crime is an issue, but again, that goes down to inequality. People resort to crime when their life isn't as good as they want it to be. But also infrastructure. So making sure that everyone has easy access to a doctor, to a dentist, to a decent school, to a leisure centre, to a swimming baths. So just making sure that Peterborough is a good place for everybody to live, not just those people who are better off than others.
Finally, why are you and your party the best choice for people to give their vote to this year?
So I think it's well accepted that Liberal Democrats are very, very good local politicians. So the Lib Dem candidates I know for this general election, and people like myself involved in local government, we're all really embedded in our communities. I've lived in Cambridgeshire for just shy of 40 years now. I love Cambridgeshire. I love the diversity of it. The fact that you can go from the dreamy spires of Cambridge to the big open plains of the Fens, to the beautiful cathedral in Peterborough. So I think if you look at Liberal Democrats involved in government, where people who were not just doing it we're not just doing it because we like politics. We're doing politics because we love the places we live. And so I think by electing a Liberal Democrat MP, you will get somebody who cares passionately about your place. And if they care passionately about your place, they care passionately about you as well.
Bridget Smith, Liberal Democrat candidate for North West Cambridgeshire, thank you for joining me on the politics of Peterborough.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you.